Welcome back to another Mysidia Post video. My name is Alex Scott, and I'm joined by Travis Pfeifer. And today we're going to be covering Opus XI.
Don't mind me. I was just drinking some water.
Yeah, drinking some water, which is the element that we'll be covering this video. So this is our last major video before we do our light and dark recap. And we're going to hit it right away with Auser, which is a 5 CP category 6 backup job millionaire. When Auser enters the field, choose one forward. If cost 2 or less your opponent controls, you gain control of it. That's a really neat effect that we've seen a few times in the past, and this is easily the simplest way to grab a forward of your opponents than compared to some of the stuff that we've seen before. There's a lot of 2 CP stuff in the meta in terms of WAF has a few cards, and stealing a Porum would certainly be good. I think that Zidane, 2 CP, Fire and Water will both see a bit of play with this Opus as well, so I think there are targets for this card. The question is if it's any good, and I think it is. I think you steal a 2 CP card, so you're kind of at 3 CP there, so that you've gained the backup and then the 2 CP of advantage, but then you've also have to factor in the CP that your opponent lost. And if it's something like an Aun, they've lost more than just 2 CP on their board. They've lost their powerhouse attacker and blocker. If you steal a Lon, they've lost one of their best ping targets. So there's definitely, if you steal a Porum, then you're getting a ton of value and you're clearing a very tricky blocker. So I think that this could be really good as an extra backup that you slot in for those matchups, and it's just a question of how often it will be dead, which will be some matchups, and then that will be a dead card in your deck.
Another candidate for if we ever had side decks, he'd be a fun one to slot in when you know what you're going against. This is not what I pictured this character looking like in Final Fantasy VI, so his art is very interesting. He looks like a big old frog or something.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. But I always did enjoy that storyline in 6. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it all. Like, in the right situation, it could be really fun. You're probably not going to see it much just because, again, people just don't want to have to attack. And the honest truth is, like, even with Aun and Lan, you're stealing it from them, but they won't be much value to you other than just to chump block, because Aun won't get all of her buffs because you probably aren't controlling any World of Final Fantasy controllers. But maybe as a one-of for that random situation when, ooh, it'd be really good to snipe this right now. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't see him getting used much, but you never know.
I mean, in Water, it gives you a favorite target, which
That's
is
true.
nice too. So, I think it could definitely see some play.
And Water is an element that really wants to have a lot of forwards on the field for, Kegnazo or Cloud of Darkness, so it's definitely in the right element for it.
Yeah, and especially if you steal a Porum, because then that's a Water one. So yeah. Okay, moving on.
Next we have Azoye. Yoi. So it's like Azoye. Yeah, however you say it. She's a 3-cost 7k forward job ninja. When Azoye enters the field, choose one forward opponent controls. If its cost is equal to or less than the number of job ninja or card name ninjas you control, return it to its owner's hand. You can pay a single water. During this turn, the next damage dealt to Azoye is reduced by 2,000 instead. I love her action ability. That could make her unreasonably hard to kill, especially because you can pop it as many times as you need to. Which you could argue will let her trade into stuff maybe she's not supposed to. So for that, I love her. The ninja effects. So bouncing is always kind of weird because, again, in a game with so many enter the field effects, there's a lot of times maybe you don't want to bounce the card because now you're just giving them a chance to replay it and and trigger that effect again. At the same time, as ninjas are good at pushing damage, if you're going for a push and they've got a scary blocker out, it can also be pretty changing. You'd be like, hey, you've lost that blocker now. So unlike the other ninjas, which I felt like were kind of unconditionally, you can just put them out whenever you want, this one you're definitely going to want to think more carefully about when you put her out. But I do really like her action ability.
Yeah, I love the action ability. It's a 3 CP, so finally we have a nice candidate for Edge's discount to make it a 2 CP ninja, which is good as well. Balance is just not that great, so that brings this card down quite a bit for me. Next up is Aiko, which is a 3 CP summoner backup, and she searches job summoners. So this art is actually really pretty. Lord of Vermilion art, and she's category 9, which is always good as well. There's a real potential for a category 9 based summoners deck this set, which is kind of interesting. So this is just like a really solid searcher. Job searchers usually get EX bursts. The one downside is that Aiko already has a searcher backup. She also already has a forward summoner that searches summons and draws cards. So by putting her here, you're limiting yourself in your summoner forwards that you can have in the first place. So,
yeah, thinking about it, like, because she could pull Legend Garnett, we're going to talk, but the other Aiko can do that already as well, and it's not just limited. It can pull any of the 9 characters. Really, I think the only thing this thing has going for maybe some of the others is that it's a burst. So, again, if you're specifically looking for the summoner archetype, then you probably want this one because it's a burst. But yeah, I don't know how this is going to compete with the other Aikos.
All right, how about our next card?
Next, we have Amo. Perhaps that's her name. I'm not sure how to pronounce Amo. She is Job Girl from the Future from FFL, Final Fantasy Legends. She's a backup, 2 cost. She has an action ability to pay 1 water, 1 colorless, dull her, and put her into the break zone. Choose 1 auto ability or action ability that only has 1 target. You may choose another target instead. That new target must be valid. Oh boy. Well, man, this is just right there, right on the edge of potential. And again, I like the idea that they're trying to put out some new effects on these backups. For a second, when I first started reading this card, I was like, oh, it's going to cancel auto abilities, which is just such only 2 cards in the game can do that right now. But alas, not the case. You're retargeting it. It's just, again, this is one of those, like, you're just going to need such a great set of circumstances to make this beneficial to you, because you're only redirecting it. You're not canceling it. So I just feel like there's just so many situations this could go wrong. It's costing you 3 CP because you got to pay the 2 and dull it, and now you're losing a backup. Like, again, maybe in that perfect situation, wow, I totally just changed the game because I made sure that auto work or that action ability. But, yeah, would it be cool when someone is playing Nail against you and they blow up 2 of their backups and you go, haha, redirect that at yourself, Nail? Yeah, but again, it's just so much setup and specificity. It's just not reliable.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. The cool thing about it that I thought of right away is that, man, do I just want to redirect someone's Fusia ping at their 9 CP Shantoto. Like,
that would be awesome.
That's the dream. Like, just saying, like, F you, Rampier, take your own Fusia damage.
Right.
But in terms of playability, I don't think it's there. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got our first legend. This is Garnett, and she's a job summoner rather than princess this time around. She's category 9, 8k power. When you cast a summon, place 1 summon counter on Garnett, remove 1 summon counter from Garnett, choose 1 forward you control that gains 2,000 power until the end of the turn. And then she has a dull ability, randomly reveal 1 card from your hand. If it is a summon, you may cast it without paying the cost. So the first ability is fairly... Like, it's neat. Like, it's a nice... Counters are pretty cool because you can just save them for later, and she can buff herself to make sure that she's protected, or she can buff your other forwards and make sure they can swing through. So I think there's a lot of cool abilities there. A lot of good summons you want to cast proactively in water as well. There's summons that just draw you cards that can put some summon counters on here, so you can play stuff like Moogle and Poo Poo and other cards of that nature, so that you are just racking up your summon counters. Now, if that's the route that you go, you're probably not using the second ability, as you want to hit something big from your hand. I think that this, in like something like in any other card game, this ability wouldn't be very good. But in FFTCG, where you can literally discard a card whenever you want to pay for something, it's way easier to shape your hand. So I think that it is a possibility that, you're playing a summoner's deck with Rydia and you have all these Raidens and Bahamuts, and that you just discard your hand so that you have like 2 cards left and they're riding in a Bahamut, and then you use your ability to cast it for free, and that's pretty powerful. Is that going to be an every game consistent thing that you do? Probably not, but I do think it's very reasonable to be able to do it on a semi-regular basis.
I'm pretty familiar with all the Amano art in general because, again, I've been a fantasy fan since basically I was a wee one, and I've looked at all his artwork, and I actually don't recognize them. So I don't know if this is new or if this is a picture I just am not familiar with, but it's really pretty, as all his stuff is. She looks very beautiful here. And I'm just not sold on this card. Again, stuff like this, it's just not my play style, like the Rydia Earth Legend from Opus IX. I've seen the potential, and when it goes off, and it's really fun, but it's certainly not reliable. Yes, you can shape your hand, but like, to guarantee that this works, you're going to have to get your hand down to like 1 or 2 summons, in which case now you have no hand. But if you're shooting a Bahamut for free off of that, the 9 cost, sure, that's absolutely worth it. Yeah, it's so specific, and it's so constructed around that. That just kind of makes me not like it, especially because we have other versions of Garnett, which I do really like. But I can 100% see the potential of like, well, I can't actually beat you because you just play a free summon every turn. So,
yeah. Well, that's enough said.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Enter the Kraken. So this is the last of our 4 fiends, 5 cost, 9k for Kraken. He's looking very dignified there with his tentacles crossed. He's a forward, job chaos. When Kraken enters the field, you may pay 1 water and 1 colorless. When you do so, choose a forward, turn it to its owner's hand. When Kraken is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for 1 job chaos other than card name Kraken, add it to your hand. Like the other 4 fiends, I do agree. I think this one's more in line with Lich because he's only that 2 extra payment as opposed to 3. I think that makes him a lot more reliable. Like we discussed with the Azoya, bounce is just something you're going to want to use on a case-by-case basis. Again, if they have a really nasty blocker out there, this could be a really good, cool, I got a body, and for 2 more, I basically just Leviathaned you, and now you're down a forward. But if it's something they're going to want to replay, then you don't want to have to do it. At the same time, because he's optional, you don't ever have to pay that extra effect. I feel like this is going to fall the way of the other 3 fiends. I just don't think they're going to see play, but I do like this one on par with Lich over the Tiamat and the Merilith.
I like this one for 2 reasons. 1, the art is amazing, and 2, the bounce doesn't have any restrictions. I still think bounce is pretty risky, but I also like the 1 CP chaos that we'll talk about next video. I like it a lot in water specifically because water doesn't have good recursion, and the 1 CP chaos lets you play things like Lena and Cloud of Darkness again, which is pretty relevant. So maybe this is a way to search that in mono water, but even then I don't think I would play it.
Yeah. One thing to note about the bounce, too, is it doesn't have to be your opponent. You can bounce your own cards. So I'm not going to be surprised if this shows up in Wind Water and just another way that people keep bouncing their own pain and such back to their hand. So that seems unlikely given the whole cost that would go into that, but you never know. So
yeah, I think if you do play this one, you are running the 1 CP Dark Chaos, so you can't be running Citra or anything, so it will be limiting. But
yeah.
Next up, we have Clavat, which is a 3 CP backup FFCC category, and he's a standard unit. So same as these other ones that we have. When Clavat enters the field, turn 1 card over at a time from the top of your deck until a fire or ice card is revealed, add it to your hand, then shuffle the other cards and return them to the bottom of your deck. Fire Water is a 9 deck that already has a bunch of searching, so it doesn't really need this. And Water Ice is a 6 deck, which has searching as well. So this one might not see much play in Constructed, but again, same as all the other ones, it has options.
Yeah, you covered it all.
Oh, the art on these cards are so nice.
Absolutely. All right, so next we have 1 CP Famfrit. He is Final Fantasy Tactic Advanced version of Famfrit. He's an EX Burst. And I didn't know Famfrit could be bad, but he is. So Here's what he does. Summon 5 EX Burst, draw 1 card. If your opponent has received 5 points of damage or more, draw 2 cards instead. Maybe it's appropriate because Famfret's normally just such a crazy card on his own. He's such a special card and a special summon, and this one I just don't like at all. Okay, so I always said 1 CP is not bad. This is the one case that 1 CP just feels pointless because if you don't have that second effect, you're literally just replacing this card.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people said that about Kusith, right? But you're replacing Kusith. You're specifically replacing it with a key part of your deck, a key forward, or a key backup. You get to choose. What if you pull another Famfret? What if you pull a backup that you already have? Like, what if you pull something completely useless? This just didn't do anything for you. Yeah, I just don't see the point. Like, yeah, if your opponent's on 5 damage, cool, you get to draw 2, but just, are you really gonna? Water's got so many great summons as is already. You're going to put that in just on the offhand chance they get 5? Like, nah, this one just seems like a waste of space. Great art, though.
Yeah, so that's what I was referring to when I said great art. I was talking about this card because they look so crisp, and I love the color. This card sucks, and if you want to play it, don't, and play honestly, play Kukulane instead. Kukulane also draws you 1 card, but has the added upside of erasing Rain's abilities. And if you do need to use it for cycle, it works exactly the same as this Famfret, but just doesn't suck. So
yeah, the only time this will ever be good is if there's some card in the future that says for every Famfret you have in your deck or in your break zone. Okay, maybe then you could think about this. But yeah, like you said, play Kukulane. You can blank anything unrestricted, and you'll draw a card, and it's a burst. Like, no, get this guy out of here.
Okay, next we have Sahagun Chief, which is a 2 CP monster job. Sahagun, category 10. When a water character other than Sahagun Chief enters the field, you get to put a monster counter on him. You can put Sahagun Chief into the break zone to return a forward you control to your hand. And if you get 3 counters, you can choose up to 2 forwards, and it does not specify the controllers, and return them to your owner's hand. You can only use this ability with 3. So this one seems pretty good too. I don't mind this one. It's a lot of work, but we've seen how important returning cards to your hand can be, your own cards as well. So, and then water's also the monster synergy.
Yeah.
Color. So if you run this, you run Gao, you can play this onto the field. If you play the new Realm, this plays it onto the field, and you put a counter on it actually. So with the other monster that you bring in, so you can load it up pretty quickly with those cards, and then recur it too. You don't have to play it for 2 CP. You can just recur it.
Yeah, this one actually maybe my favorite of the monsters of this type, because water also has Lena, Lunafreya, Layla Viking, so it has ways to quickly get out cards. So even if like you're already at 5 backups, I feel like this would feel as bad to draw later in the game because water has ways to get out a bunch of people really quick, and then boop, 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 you've just stacked up the counters. And then again, you can use it as a Kegnazo combo instead of having to like scholar your Kegnazo to play him twice in a turn. Now you get to keep your backup. You break the Sahagun, bounce the Kegnazo, boom, throw him out again. So because of the way water works, I think this one could actually have some potential with those things.
I really like that too. So if you have him out when you do the Kegnazo, you're actually getting a bigger Kegnazo than you normally would because he's counting towards it as well. So that makes him pretty good.
Yeah, he would be great for Nicole as well because, again, Nicole powers up off a backup. So if you scholar the Nicole, you're always shrinking his power by 1, but now you can do it, put him out again, boom, you still got all your backups. So, yeah, specifically with water, I think he could actually have some potential.
Pretty good. Okay.
All right. Next, we have White Mage, which is a 4-cost, 8K forward job standard unit. Another one of the specials. Great art. White Mage has always been my favorite job in Final Fantasy, and this one looks great. When White Mage enters the field, if the cost to play White Mage was paid with CP of 2 or more different elements, activate all the forwards you control. So Alex and I have pretty much crapped on all these cards across the board, but again, I have to admit, I kind of like this one more than the others. First of all, it's on curve. All the others are like 4 cost for 7K, but this one's 8K, so you at least get an on-curve body. And activating all your forwards can be very helpful, especially if you're playing something like against ice, lightning, something that's going to dull your board. Granted, again, you're going to have to be playing dual elements, so that part sucks. So it still has all the flaws that all the other versions of this card, but I do think it is slightly better.
This card should have been 3 CP7K, first off. We So all these cards are worse versions of different cards that exist, and this one's no different. We have an Opus 3 Porum that says when Porum enters the field, activate all the forwards you control. It's a 4-cost 7k, so you lose 1,000 power, but it has a special. Choose one forward you control during this turn. The next damage dealt to it becomes 0 instead, and that's Kuraga, and it costs 1 Porum to use. So it's got upside and just that blanket cure as well. So if you're really, really thinking about playing this card, go get the Opus 3 singles for that Porum and play that instead. Okay, so we have another monster that breaks or that removes a backup from the game. I said that I like the Antlion one. I like this one the most. This is Sprite. It's a 3 CP monster, job fairy, FFTA, 7k power. So during your turn, Sprite also becomes a forward with 7k power. Water has a lot of monster synergy, as we stated, so that makes this automatically better than the other ones. It has that 1 water, discard Sprite, remove 1 card from the game, or sorry, 1 backup from the game. Choose 1 forward or monster, return it to its owner's hand. You can only use this ability if Sprite is in your hand. I like this for 2 reasons. 1, it chooses monster or forward and is not restricted to cost. And 2, water has poor backup breaking capabilities. They have things like Tidus to return a backup to their hand, but that's pretty involved. And this allows you to remove or to bounce your own stuff as well. But it also lets you get rid of that Gramps that you played because you wanted to ramp backups, but now you don't have a space for your Minmu. So I think that kind of gives it a little bit of potential, and I'd be interested to see if this sees play in some water decks as a one-of.
Agreed. Yeah, you said all. I think this has more potential than the others. I really am kind of surprised that there's no restriction on the monster. I mean, they could have just put down, what if they hard cast a 9 CP Shantoto? Like, cool, you can pay 9 CP again because that's going back to your hand. Or you can bounce your own stuff. Again, you can bounce your own Cagnazzo this way, or your Nickel to then replay them again. And like you said it perfectly, I've felt backup blocked with water plenty of times. That's one of the reasons as much as I like Gramps and like Mirrorweb, sometimes I don't like putting them down because I'm like, shoot, now I'm locked out of that crucial Minwu spot or the Waka spot or whatever. So compared to the others, again, because of the way Waka, I think this could see some play where the others wouldn't.
Yeah, and if you do play this in a monster deck and you put it out as the forward monster combination, you are getting a bunch of monster synergy, so it fits very well in that deck as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we're going to go to Final Fantasy IV, Theodore, or is it Theodore? Yeah. So 4 cost, 8k body, Job Prince, he's a forward. Dull 1 active card named Cecil forward, and 1 active card named Rosa forward. Play Theodore onto the field. You can only use this ability during your turn and if Theodore is in the break zone. So he has another version of himself, which is okay. I got to use a decent effect in my Water Party 4 deck. It wasn't anything to write home about, but he was fine. This one's interesting. It's hard to imagine a point where you really want to dull a Cecil and a Rosa. Like, that's a pretty decent price to pay. But, again, on that offhand situation that he's in your break zone and maybe you just played both of them down this turn, and so they can't attack anyway, so you just dull him to get the free Theodore. What's also nice, too, he doesn't come onto the field dull. He will come on active, so he can block for you right away. I really like his artwork. Or maybe if you have some play where you're going to activate everything, that Porum you mentioned, you're happy to dull them, hit them out, hit the Porum. I don't know. It sounds like a lot of work, but we'll just have to see.
There are 2 cards printed this set that work with Theodore. 1, the Rydia gives all your Category 4 forwards Brave, so they can attack, and then in main phase 2 they can pop this guy. And then the Hooded Man at the end of your turn activates all your 4 characters as well. Although I actually have to double check that. If that's an end turn thing, then you won't be able to stack this with that.
Oh, yeah.
But at the very least, you could dull them, and they would come back up as blockers. So there's some synergy there. I actually misread this the first time I read it, and I thought that it would allow you to do it with the backups. It was just card name Cecil, card name Rosa, which would be insane because there's backup versions of both, and that would be such a cool thing. It would just be 2 CP to bring back an infinite forward. No, so it's way harder to do with forwards. That being said, I am all in on this card, and I am going to make it work. It's going to happen. Just watch me.
Godspeed, sir.
Okay, here we go. Another legend, Celes. So she is a 3 CP 7K forward, category 6 Rune Knight, and this is pretty interesting because it's not an ice or fire. It gives you a different element to play 6 in. When Celes attacks, select one of the 3 following actions. If you received 3 damage or more, you get to pick 2. So she can gain 2,000 power until the end of the turn. She can gain when she deals damage to your opponent, draw a card. And she can choose 1 backup you control, 1 forward your opponent controls, return them to their owner's hand. So she gets the Tidus ability, but can't target your own forwards on swing, which is pretty nice. This card is kind of crazy, and this is the way I want to preface it. That last video we talked all about legend powers, or maybe it was the Earth video, we talked all about how powerful legends are, and then like Earth always gets the ones that are so specific. Like, this card is a slot-in card that can just be played on its own with no synergy with it. But then it also is going to be amazing in Final Fantasy VI decks because it has a bunch of synergy with Final Fantasy VI. And then that is just, to me, is crazy. Like, it's just, why did it have to be a 6 card? 6 got so much help that it didn't need.
Yeah.
That being said, it's a really good card. I like it a lot. Very cool.
Yeah, she's nice. I'm a little higher now on her. Was when I was just like, I don't know, it's not for me. All of her effects are solid. The one thing that kind of gives me pause. Well, first of all, let me compliment her in saying that 3 damage is very easy to hit, and getting 2 of these effects on 3 damage is very strong. Again, the bounce is always what you get. Plus, you have to lose a backup to do that. And the only thing is, water doesn't have a ton of backups that do something on entry unless you've got like a searcher. But a lot of their key backups, like Waka, Yuna, Minwu, those aren't doing anything when you plop them down. So you definitely but she would probably slot well into like Water Wind, where you could bounce your Mione. So maybe she'll go in with that Tidus package to do that. However, the only thing is, the good news is, unlike she doesn't have to deal them damage. She does for the water. It's just by declaring the attack, boom, she gets all these. However, she's also not much of a threatening attacker on her own. She's just on curve, so I kind of worry about like how much she's going to be able to go in, because you might be sacking this if you go in. Unlike the Ash from last Opus, where she just, by going into the attack phase, she could power everything up and do all of her tricks. But again, like especially in Wind Water, I could see, okay, go to attack. I'm going to give myself 9,000, and if you don't block me, I'm going to get to draw a card. So I could see her being a lot sneakier than I originally thought she would be.
Yeah, I think that damage restriction is really important until 3 damage, because you can't do the power boost and the draw effect until you get to there. The one thing in mono water, like if you're bouncing, again, like we said for the last card, if you're bouncing your Gramps and your Marowub or Battleron or any of those cards, and that's feeling pretty good. Or even stuff like Bronn, just to get more Vikings, get more Knights. Like, those are all great targets to bounce. Especially if bouncing your opponent's forwards becomes important in this set.
It does give her a nice final swing play that if you're both on 6 damage or whatever, and they've only got 1 blocker, it's just like, hey, guaranteed, bounce, bye. And their board's open, so...
You can also bounce things like Veritas, because what are they going to do? Play Veritas when you have like a Viking out? Like, there's lots of scenarios where you can make those types of plays bad, and your opponent will not want to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So we've got 2 cost backup. This is Tone Betty, Job Advisor from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Love this artwork. It just looks so fun. I had no idea this was a person. Or maybe that is Mira inside of it. Maybe Tone Betty's the costume. I don't know. I haven't played this game, so I'm not sure. Is from My Life as a Dark Lord. Anyway, her effect. The card named Mira you control gains 2,000 power. When Tome Buddy is put from the field into the break zone, draw one card. Obviously, if you're playing Mira, this feels like almost a guaranteed slot in. But then again, I also know the other Tome Buddy works well with her. So just gives that little combo a little more monster synergy. I'm always a little iffy on cards that by themselves have a break zone effect but can't put themselves into the break zone, because again, it means you have to have a combo piece, you have to have something else that's going to send this in. It's one of the reasons I like Crow so much from the Kingsglaive Lightning, because it was like, if all else fails, Crow can force herself into the break zone, but makes it a great Veritas target, and if there's other cards that can force her into the break zone, then you get to draw a card, which is nice.
So this Tom Betty works really well with the new Mira, because the new Mira can turn her into a forward, and then as soon as she's a forward, your opponent can block her, and if she dies, she draws a card. So we'll talk more about that when we see the new Mira. But yeah, this is a good card. And at 2 CP, you're not even that worried about the breakup zone effect. It's totally icing on the cake because you didn't have to pay extra for it. Like, it's going to be a huge value if you get it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a Searcher. We have Bronn, which is a 3 CP backup, category 9, job queen. When Bronn enters the field, you may search for one job princess forward and add it to your hand. And then when a job king forward or a job princess forward you control is put from the field to the break zone, you may pay 2 water, and if you do so, choose one forward, return it to its owner's hand. There's a lot of bounce this set.
Yeah, really came back on that.
I really like this because it's a Searcher, and there's lots of good princess cards. We have things like Ash, and we have things like Garnett and others. And this card just gets this bonus. Like, normally Searchers, once they've searched, that's it. They're done. They're going to sit there. Yeah. This one has a whole extra bonus that you don't have to use, but you can, and I really like that.
Yeah, it's you said it. I was going to kind of critique that second effect because, again, bounce is bounce. And it's going to cost you 2 water, but it's completely optional. So if you don't want to do it, don't do it, and you've already gotten your value off of her because the point is to search her. And I'm glad she can search her daughter because that's what she should be able to do. Also, it's neat that this card doesn't really have anything in common with the other Bronn. Sometimes when they print the same card name multiple times, they always all kind of do a similar effect. So it's kind of neat that she's just like, no, you just search for something entirely different. So, yeah. I like her. All right. Ooh. As if there aren't enough Porums in the game to choose from. Continuing with the love this set, this is Porum, 2-cost backup, job white mage, category 4. Some of my favorite artwork from by far. I really like this artwork. So, when Porum enters the field, discard 1 card from your hand. If the discarded card is not a category 4 card, draw 1 card. If the discarded card is a category 4 card, draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card from your hand. You can tap and put Porum into the break zone, choose a forward. During the next turn, the damage dealt to it is reduced by 2,000 instead. So that extra effect is what Opus X Cecil did on a backup. I know Alex is a big 4 guy, so if he wants to convince me otherwise, he can. But reading this card sucks so much. Porum already has so many good cards. There's the activation one you mentioned that I've never even seen used. Why? Because the legend is great, and because that Opus 9 one we got is so strong. So there's already so many great Porums. And this one, like, I don't understand the wording. Like, so discard, so you're always discarding. So not only have you just put 2 CP on your backup, now you got to discard. You only ever are going to want to do this if you're discarding a category 4 card, because otherwise you're just discarding to draw one, which is just awful. So you want to do a 4, but then when you do the 4, you have to discard 1 anyway, again. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the Setzer card that we got earlier was like, well, if this person discards a 6 card, then you get the advantage. The point is that to benefit you. But even if you discard the 4 card, well, now you get to do 2, and you still got to discard 1. Like, why? I don't know. That's just incredibly unappealing to me. Do you want to change my mind?
Yeah. I wonder if you're misreading this card, because it's like playing.
Please, enlighten me.
It's like playing Moogle, right? So Moogle, you draw 2 and discard 1. It's the same thing. It's putting Moogle on a backup. It's huge. Mm-hmm. So it's great. Like, for example, the Legend Ash from the last set has a ability, draw 1, discard 1. which is a super used ability because it's letting you cycle out cards of your hand that you don't want to have in your hand. So at the bare minimum, this has an Ash effect on entry, and then has an action ability that's easy to use. So the one thing I'm not going to defend is that you absolutely should be playing the Legend Porum or the 2CP Forward Porum. Those are better cards. Those are really, really strong cards. So like that's totally fair. But in terms of this, as evaluating this card as just a backup and not a card named Porum, it's really solid. Like to add on, like for example, searchers are all 3 to 4 cost, and this is 2 CP, and you're getting similar value. So when you pitch this, when you play, let's say you pitch a card to play your Porum, and then you discard one Cecil, you're going to draw 2 cards back. So you kind of, the 1-for-1 is there, but that extra card that you just drew back cancels out the card that you pitched for Porum. So your total card count is just going to be a Porum went from your hand onto the field.
But then you have to discard after you draw that. So you pitch the Cecil, you draw 2.
So that's why you draw 2.
Now you got to give up another one.
Yeah. So no, it's there's only 1 discard, right?
No, there's 2 if it's a 4 card. It says if the discarded card is a category card, draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card from your hand. And you have to discard on entry. So tell me if I'm reading this wrong, because the way I'm reading this is on entry, you pitch a card. Let's say it was that Cecil. You draw 2, and you have to pitch again. So you've discarded twice. Not to mention what if you did to get down.
Maybe it's me that's been misreading this card.
Because it says if the discarded card is a category, draw 2 cards, then discard. It doesn't say instead. So you have to pitch 1 to get her onto the field. If it's a 4 card, you'll draw 2, and then you have to pitch again. So you have to discard twice.
Okay. So it's just like so it just makes it into an ultra cycle.
Basically, yeah. I mean, yeah, again, if you have dead cards in your hand, sure, it's great to cycle that, but you might be throwing away good stuff. And again, to me, it's supposed to be the benefit of like what the Setzer does. Oh, but if it's a 6 card, you get the bonus. Oh, but it's a 4 card if you get the bonus, except you now have to discard a second time. Yeah. That's so weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, so at the very base of it, it's still a 2 CP backup. So whether or not that cycle is important to you, then that's your choice. So I think personally, like that's still pretty fine. Like if you want to cycle cards out of your hand, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's something that we've been doing with Ash for a whole set, right? It's clearly a strong ability. So the other thing about this card that's super powerful is just specifically in a 4 deck, you want to have 4 backups so that Rydia automatically searches a summon. Because it's a lot harder to assemble 4 category 4 forwards for Rydia to be active. So with this card, you have Leonora that searches it, so searches a backup, and then you play Porum, and that gets you your 2, and then you have, like, let's say Luca, that's 3 category 4 backups. You play Rydia, she searches a 1 CP summon from your deck. So it's kind of going to be part of that assembly of putting together like this package, but you're totally right in that you need to be playing the other versions of Porum.
It's a lot of text for you're not even going to play this anyway over the other Porum. So
yeah, unless you're playing a 4 deck.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe if you're entitled, that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Moving on. Okay, we have Mira. So Mira is a 2 CP water forward, job Dark Lord, category FFCC. When a category FFCC character other than Mira you control is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for 1 category FFCC character of the same card type and add it to your hand. This effect will trigger only once per turn. So this is similar to her monster version, but a little bit more flexible. And then she has the dull ability to choose a category FFCC character that's not a forward, and you can activate it and turn it into an 8K forward. So you play this with Ton Betty. She's a 2 CP 7K, which is nice because it's just an extra protection. And then you turn Ton Betty into a forward. If they block Ton Betty and kill her, you draw 1 card. So that's really good. You turn stuff like Norstalin into forwards. There's so much potential here. And then, of course, when those For example, if they block Tom Betty, you draw one card and search a category, backup FFCC. So you just search another Tom Betty, and then you play that one, and then you do it again. So there's so much value here, and it requires a lot of building to make a very specific FFC deck, but it's very cool.
Great artwork again. I love the picture frame, and this makes me want to play My Life as a Dark Lord in these Crystal Chronicles games. I don't even know if they're that great, but the artwork really entices me in. And yeah, something that can make your backups become forwards is kind of nutty. So this will be a fun one to watch. Like, I don't know if it'll ever be competitive, but man, just like there's a lot of fun potential here. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people do with this one.
Yeah, big time. I think that it's definitely going to see a lot of play. Okay, what's our next card?
Lady Yunalesca. This is Yunalesca. She's a job summoner. 4 cost, 8k. Category is Mobius and 10. The cost required to cast your summons is reduced by 1 for each job summoner force you control. It cannot become 0. When Yunalesca enters the field, choose 1 summon in your break zone. Place it at the bottom of your deck. I've heard a lot of different things about this card, and I don't know if I'm honestly sure even what to think of it at this point. It's very obvious they did make a push for the summoner job this set, but because it's brand new, I just don't know how effective that won't be. In theory, you could get in that Rydia deck or the Garnett deck, like if you've got a bunch of summoner birds on the field, you don't even need to do the Garnett, random cast, because hey, they're only cost 1 or 2 CP. I don't like this in mono water. Like, some people are like, oh dude, you combine this with Yuna and Famfrit's 1. It's like, sure, but Famfrit doesn't feel bad at 2, and Bismarck is already 1, and Kuchelin's already 1. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's better water forwards I would rather put in, because that stuff's already super cheap. I've never felt, man, if only Famfrit was 1 CP, I could win this game. So I don't like her for mono water, and I just don't know about this whole job summoner thing and how relevant that's going to be. But again, she obviously fits into that deck, the Garnett deck, the hey, load it up with a bunch of summons, get the summoners out there, and the cheaper they are, the better. And then just her second effect is just weird. It's like break zone recursion, but you need a way to search out that summon. Otherwise, what's the point? It's so odd that it throws it to the bottom of the deck. I would have expected on the top of the deck. If it was the top of the deck, I think this could see more play, because again, you could stack a burst. Hey, I put a Famfrit on. Hey, I put a Leviathan on. Swing into me. But the fact that against the bottom, now you have to use like that ephemeral summon or something else that you can then fish the summon out and use it, because otherwise, what good is that going to do if it's at the bottom of your deck? What do you think?
I think that bottom of the deck is actually a nerf, so that it doesn't work as well with Light Yuna. Because Light Yuna, you want to constantly recur from your break zone by removing 3 summons from your break zone. So this has a ton of synergy with Light Yuna. So that when you play this, it actually makes your Light Yuna worse. It makes it one off, put one less target for it to remove. That's my theory. But otherwise, I just think it's a downside because it's a good card. I don't think that you play this card unless you play Braska. Like, you have to play both.
Yeah.
So if this as a 3 CP 8K that can reduce your summons, like, that's really good. If you played it in mono water, maybe you do play it with Braska, and then because then your 2 CP unit backup's also 1 CP, right? True. That's true. There's a lot of synergy there. I think Summoner's got a lot of support, so I definitely want to see it. Like, the Rydia deck is not weak. Like, it's a strong deck, and it's won our locals multiple times. So if this helps it, then maybe we'll see.
Awesome.
Excuse me. Next up, we have Realm, which is a 5 CP forward, 4,000 power Pictomancer. Category 6. When a realm enters the field, you may search for up to one monster of cost 1 and 1 monster of cost 2. Play them onto the field. At the end of each of your turns, choose 1 forward your opponent controls. If you control 5 or more monsters, return it to its owner's hand. So this card is super hyped. This is one of the most talked about cards on Facebook that I've seen, hands down. And I think it is incredibly strong to be able to search and play 2 monsters. It gives you a lot of value, it's better than just searching. This is nets plus value, because those cards are both worth 2 CPS cards, and then they're on the field doing whatever they do. They're any color monster you want as well. And there's lots of really good generic monsters that you can play with this, like the 1 CP goblin that draws you a card and gives something haste, and lots of good 2 CP monsters that you can play with this as well. The one thing is, you're either going to have to go hard into this to play multiple realms. You'll have to put a lot of monsters in, and that's going to make your overall draws worse because you're drawing all these monsters that you don't really want to play right away, but you do want to play at the realm. Or you're going to play this at a low count, so you're going to play 1 realm and less monsters so that you can get the realm value but not compromise your deck too much. I do think that there is a constraint on deck building here that people are overlooking for the upside of this card.
Yeah, I love the end effect similar to Morrow, that again, it doesn't matter what state she's in or what she just has to, as long as she's in the field and you've got the proper monster count, that's going to go off. The searching is obviously great. She's going to die to a stiff breeze because she's so weak at 4K power. But yeah, this one feels like they put a lot of thought into it design-wise, and I know some people at my locals that'll definitely try this whole monster shenanigan. Kind of makes me want to try it, honestly, and see what we can pull out of it. So I appreciate the design aspect and the thought they put into this, and it's something different. It's kind of fun and unique. So I don't know if it'll be good, but I appreciate the idea regardless.
So if you play during Opus 4, their Mono Water Monsters was a tournament deck. It was like making finals of Crystal Cups, very powerful list, and it had no problem getting to 5 monsters for this Realms effect. But if you got to 5 monsters, you're probably already winning anyway because you have an absolutely massive Cagnazzo board clear coming anyway. So yeah. I'd like to see this in like multicolor decks rather than mono water monsters, but it also fits very well in there as well.
Awesome.
Okay, second to last.
All right, 2 CP backup, Alchemist, standard unit, Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. You tap him and put Alchemist into the break zone. Discard 1 card from your hand. If you do, search for 1 card of the same card type as the discarded card and add it to your hand. So he's very interesting. You know, it looks like each, or at least a couple of the elements, got these kind of unique backups from Tactics Advanced that kind of have this newer effect that we haven't really seen yet. It kind of reminds me of the backup Neath Fire, which you have to discard a card and then you can fish one out of the same cost. This one is of the same type. So, for example, if you absolutely needed your 5-drop Yuna and you had an extra, Minwoo in hand or an extra Waka in hand, you can throw that out and boom, just pull out exactly what you need. The idea, what if you need your Cagnazzo in water or you need your Fina in water wind? It's like you can pitch any forward and whoop and pull it right out of your hand. So this one definitely has potential. Again, like any of these effects, there'll be kind of that moment. Like, there's going to be times you're going to want to use it and you're not going to have what you need in hand. Or other times you're going to absolutely have it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this making its way into some decks because of the way it's worded, there isn't much restriction. It just has to be the same type of card. So you need a forward, you can pitch any forward and then pull any forward out of your deck. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It costs, so it's just 1 CP, and I like searching a backup with it because you're clearing the space for the backup. You can rush out to your 5 backups, and what's really neat, if you're playing this in Water Earth, that you could break this and discard your backup to search a Shantoto, and now you have the space to play the Shantoto. And Shantoto on demand is pretty powerful, so I'd like to see that be attempted in some sort of list.
I'm sure it will be.
Okay, finally we have Rosa, which is a 3 CP 7K category 4 and job White Mage. She has an EX burst. When Rosa enters the field, if you control a card named Cecil, draw 1 card, discard 1 card. She has the ability to discard 1 card and then draw 1, which is something that we saw on Ash and was certainly used quite a bit, especially when you're fishing for answers. And then she has an ability called a special called Teleport, which is 1 Rosa and a doll. Choose any number of characters you control and return them to their owner's hands, and you can do this ability once per turn. And I can't remember where I was reading this. Maybe it was Alex Hancock's review. He said, like, how fun would it be to, you're like swinging for your 7th point of damage, and on the stack you just bounce everything except for your attacker, and then just because you know you're gonna win, so you're just like, okay, here's all my cards back into my hand, but I
Right.
won. So that will certainly be a fun way to beat people. It's a really interesting special. You can use it as protection when someone uses removal on your cards. You can use it to recycle backups or important forwards to use ETPs again. There's a lot of potential there for shenanigans. This card has a lot going for it. It's interesting. You could play a backup Cecil, and then this is automatically a draw a card on entry and draw a card on EX Burst, which is very powerful. It becomes a pain, like a reasonable pain, like without the backup activation. If you play this with the forward, it's going to be a lot harder to assemble, but then this would be a great one to play with the Theodore. So it's a card I'm going to definitely try out.
Yeah, she's worth a shot. There's a lot of Rosa cards, and probably my favorite so far is the Opus IX Legend forward that reduces damage, and she can reactivate everything with the prey. It's interesting, they always tie her to Cecil, just like Tifa is often always tied to Cloud. And so because of that, I'm just not a huge fan of that EX burst effect, because it can just be difficult sometimes to keep both a Cecil. Because as much as I like that backup Cecil, nobody's running it. If they're running a Cecil, they're running a forward version. So to have that on the field for that to go off is kind of eh. I like her action ability because, again, unlike Porum, where maybe you're wanting to put that down early as a backup, this is completely optional. You get to choose. So you're only ever going to discard when you know it's going to be beneficial for you and there's a card in your hand. Okay, I absolutely want to junk this. And as you saw, we saw it could be useful with the Ash. And what's nice, too, is... Or no, it says during your turn, so you can't use it on your turn. And the teleport, I'm not sure what to think of. Like, it could be really fun. I don't know how useful it'll honestly be. I guess in theory you could use it to see, even if you use it to bounce a blocker, like the only problem is in theory you're only gonna get that one person because you can only declare one block at a time. But I don't know, maybe there's characters you want to replay, and so you go, oh, boop, 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 bounce these three, so then I can just put them all back for their field effects. So that one's gonna be kind of goofy. I don't know how useful that's gonna be, but yeah, she's nice. Not my favorite Rosa, but I'll be interested to see if people can make her work better than that she reads to me.
Just in response to people's abilities and summons, though, you can bounce and fizzle their targets.
That is true, which would be pretty nice.
Yeah, they spend 7 CP on their Fusoya, and you put your card back into your hand and fizzle it.
That would be sweet.
Like, that's pretty good. So before the Opus X Legend Ash came out, there was actually people that started to run the starter Ash that if you control a job Sky Pirate, when Ash enters the field, draw a card. Mm-hmm. And people would run the backup Fran. And then you'd play Ash, and Ash was just a 1 CP draw card. And she could activate a job Sky Pirate if she wanted, but like that was essentially Rosa without the EX burst and without any of the other stuff. So I want to, like, if that's a valuable play, which I really think it is, like, it's really good. It's a 1 CP 7K that drew you a card, is cycling your deck. If people will play that 2-card combo for that draw, I think people will play Cecil and Rosa. And especially in something like Mono Water, you're not generally playing the 4 or 5 cost Cecil anyway. So, like, if you're playing Water Earth, then it's going to be really tough to take the 5 CP Cecil out for the 2 CP water backup. But if you're playing in a water-based deck or water wind, water whatever, then those other Cecils are good, but they weren't seeing play. They just weren't. So I do think that the combination with the Cecil backup is very much worth testing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's it for water, and we've only got one more video to film, which is our light and dark one, and then we're done for the set. So, we're really just firing these out here, eh?
Yeah, I was a little washed up on water before we did this review, but reading over them, I actually am a little higher on it than I was. Water is kind of weird, the set, because unlike a couple of the others where it's like, oh, this archetype or this category got really pushed, water kind of feels like it's a bit more all over. It feels like there's just like a little bit of everything in it. But I think that's also, again, part of the reason I'm a little higher on it than I originally was, because like, oh, okay, like there's a little of this, a little of that. This could help, this could not help. So, yeah, water's interesting. I don't think it's as strong as it was in Opus X, because Opus X got some really sweet water cards. But it's a little better than I originally thought when I first looked at it.
Yeah, there's definitely some gems here, and a lot of individual archetypes, monsters, FFCC, Category 4 decks, Ninja decks, Summoner decks. There's just this. I think this set, like I'd have to look it up, but I feel like this set has had more archetype support than ever before.
Yeah.
They've
Definitely.
really tried to push people into different directions, and that's going to be so much fun deck building. And my only hope is that it translates onto the tournament scene, where we're seeing people try all sorts of stuff. Because if the tournament scene comes out and it's Weewa, Waff, and Rampier, then you know what? That doesn't make me want to play in tournaments. That makes me want to just play at locals.
Yeah.
So we're going to be back soon enough with the light and dark, and we'll talk about that. And at the end of the set, we'll do a review as well and kind of check back and see how our takes have aged. I'm sure that there's a few things I'm fired up about that are not going to age so well, but we'll just have to see.
And the reverse will be true as well.
Yes, exactly. Some things that we missed, and yeah. All right, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Alex Scott.
Travis Pfeifer.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards of Evilise. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FF Decks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.